So, humans, they exist. They're, Homo sapiens. They exist. Anyways, you want to draw them, right? Maybe you have been reading the newspaper and you read the cartoons or whatever, like a legend, you actually read the newspaper. And you want to make your own cartoons, but every time you draw them, everything seems off. Like, something about, the humans, they just, they're cartoony, they just don't seem right. Well, that's probably because of your proportion. Because the proportion doesn't line up with what they would look like in real life. And, yes, we're going to show how to do that, basically, in simple terms, for simple people, because complexity is overrated. Anyways, look at this man, okay? His name, Dr. Phil, okay? He's a good example for this. We're going to be looking at him, okay? Just use the power of some tape and tape him down. Right? His face is kind of small. But if we look at him here, you can see, he's a human. And the good thing about him is that he's mostly bald so that we can see his entire head. This is really convenient for what we're going to do today. And so we want to see, how big is this head, right? We're not going to focus on the shoulders. We're just going to work on his face and his head sizing. And so if you look at it, the first thing we'll have to know is, I don't know, let's just say this is the top of his head, this line. So that's how high it goes, and this is its chin, that's how low it goes, right? So we're going to be basing everything off of that. And I do not possess a ruler, so we're gonna say it's a measurement. Yeah. Now, if we look at where his eyes are, right? They're right here, okay? This is right here. Okay? And that's the line those eyes are on, okay? Now, if we were to measure this, right? Let's use, I don't know, eraser's a good measurement. See, it's about, horizontal length here, or vertical length, and same there. So basically what you can tell is that by the way humans are made, the eyes are always in the middle. Now this is where a lot of people get thrown off when they're drawing, because for example, if we look at this lady over here on this album cover, she's cool, she makes doot noises, right? Gotta tape this down too. Tape is the world's best invention, okay? Tape. Now, if we look at her, right, in a general sense, right, you see, if Mr. Dr. Phil over here would have a hairline, right, I don't know, maybe it'd be like here, this is his army hat looking hair, okay, right? That would be his hairline. So it might make a little more sense, but if you look at something like this really likes to deceive you in thinking that the eyes are a lot higher up on the total height of the head than they actually are. Because if you look at this, right, with the same thing as last time, if we draw this through, we can see that this is pretty much the same distance. Now, this is where people get messed up, because especially if you draw hair like this, you might be more inclined to not make the 5 head as bigger and put the eyes higher up on the head, and then there's a bunch of space down here, and it's, if it's not equal, then it doesn't look quite right. You know what I'm saying? And so that's something that's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about human face proportions. Another thing is that, in another relation to the eyes, is a lot of people think the nose is the center of the head. That's another common misconception. Yes, it's close, but it's not exactly. If you put the nose in the middle and then put the eyes above that, it then starts to not look right. So you want to avoid trying to do that. And so what you'll do is, for the nose it also is really in relation to the mouth, right? If you draw another line through here, through both of these guys, and, girl and guy, same difference. This isn't an exact science, but we can see that it is roughly a little under 1/4 of the way up between these two. You can simplify that to 1/4 if we're doing cartoony kind of things, right? And so that's where their mouth would be. And so once you can draw the mouth in at 1/4 of this total height, then you can draw in your nose. Now, you don't have to measure everything. I'm not being very scientific with any of this. I'm not measuring anything. So you can just, once you get used to drawing in these ratios, you can just kind of fill it in. But by doing this, you can make them look very proportional and actually look like the way they're supposed to. Because yes, they're cartoony, you know. They may not, well, yeah, probably will not. I mean, if it's a cartoon, it's not really going to look very realistic. But it still resembles a human, you know, and it still looks right, per se. You know, it looks like everything is the way it's supposed to. Now, if you can look at like any other, like not any other animal, but a lot of animals, like if you were to look at like a mammal, like your cat or something, they'll have similar proportions, as in like, let's say we have, I don't know, what's his name? What's a generic cat name? Whiskers. He's got whiskers, okay? When you draw a cat, you know, and you have him, if you put like the eyes like up here, and then like if you were to say his nose is in the center face, his mouth here, that looks a little weird, right? But if you were to take the man, that's not a very good circle. Let's try again. Or ovoid. Now if we were to put the eyes a little more centered, and then have the nose and the mouth and the ears, now this looks a lot better than something like this. This is not what you want. You want something more like this. This is a great example, but you kind of get it, and you can apply that to humans as well. And now, if we think about cartoons, right, you know, when you really look at it, you know, human eyes in comparison to cartoons are really, really, really small, you know. If you really think about it, they're kind of small versus cartoon eyes. They're a lot bigger because cartoons express emotions a lot easier. They'll be more real with you than any living human ever will be, which is very sad. But if we look at, like, let's say, I don't know, this is Higashika Josuke. Okay, where's tape? There's tape. Tape-kun. Now, JoJo is a, you know, not exactly, you know, realism. It's a cartoon, but, you know, quite realistic anime for anime, right? You know, you got relatively similar proportions in terms of, like, the eyes are very small, you know? They're small like these. And if we look at it, Josuke is a big, you know, mound of hair. But if we take it and we say, like, this is the top of his head, okay? And this is his chin, right? His eyes, again, are going to be in the center, okay? So that's as you can see, same distance, you know? Now you have to think about, you know, maybe he's looking down, so the angle's going to make it so it's higher than it usually should be. Or maybe, you know, in other instances, some people have really poofy hair, right? Like if you were to take this chick with a pancake, right? That's totally a pancake. Glue her to the table. Now this is something with more, you know, exaggerated, cartoony kind of looks, right? You know, the eyes are a lot larger than what they'd normally be. And if you were to say, like, oh, well, if I put my other line, you know, it's kind of black on black, it doesn't work. But for the line up here and the line down here, you know, the eyes would be not really in the middle. But what you have to think is that this is hair. This is not the actual head. If we look at this, like, if we look at this man again, right? He's bald. Honk. Anyways, so his head proportions show that his eyes would be in the middle based on his head. If we have extra hair in the way, it's not gonna be like that. So that's why, I don't know if you've seen people, you know, maybe you're going to school or something, and they're like, you know, you gotta draw your anime boys, you know, girls in school. She's like, and they draw it like that's not a very good thing. But like very angular, and then they draw this massive head, and then they put like the cross in it. That's basically the proportions they're trying to do. And they base it off of the fact that this is them without hair, and then they go in and they're like, ooh, cool, anime boy, this is Deku, right? Okay, so his name is Deku here, okay. Hold on. Fit the scene a little better. Green, okay, that's Deku. He's a very evil man, okay. Anyways. So yeah, you'll see him like that, and that's, you know, that's a really good way to do it. If you know, you like to draw people bald first before you put hair on them, that's reasonable. I personally don't do that. I just kind of draw a wedge and then hair, and I just kind of magically do it. So yeah. Anyways, back to this. Because if we think about this, if we were to, I'm not going to actually draw this. This is too much effort. for a short amount of time. But if we see this again, right, we have our bottom line here. We have our... Now, if you look at this, this is kind of hard to figure out where the top line is. But if we think about it, you know, this is big poof in the back. It's probably going to be like about here, right? And then, of course, the eyes are going to be in the middle. It just works out every single time, okay? And again, you know, like in these ones with the mouth placement, the nose placement, you know, it's the same all around. And so, another thing is that, like, if you're doing something with poofy hair, you can just, like, for example, like these little bangs here, right? You can just draw these ones first and just leave that out. That's what I like to do. And then you draw the poof later. So you just try and get it based on the head. And then once you have your head laid out and everything looks proportionate, then you can go nuts with the hair. That's something else to help make it a little more easy to get that proportion correct. So that's pretty much all there is to it. In terms of head to shoulder ratio, it can be varied. If we look at a human, right, this is a side profile, right? This does not work for our purposes. But if we look at Mr. Dr. Phil, right, he's Mr. MVP of the day. Okay. If we were to say, oh, this head is like this big, and we were to draw another one like next to it, you know, that's not going to cover the whole thing. But another one next to it, they're about 3 heads long, because considerably, you know, this man, he's got those angular shoulders. Natural humans, you know, I don't know about you, maybe you got some plastic surgery or something, but most people don't have these angular shoulders, so it'll drop off earlier than you would think, like right about here. And so when you're trying to draw realistically, roughly, if you make the head size, right, if you're working on the head first and then do the shoulders are roughly 3 heads put next to each other. Now, of course, you know, like this is like, you know, like a fourth of the head is the other on each side for the extra shoulder. JoJo's realism. Yeah. Anyway, not realism. Whatever. But you get the point. So that's something else to keep in mind. Of course, you know, you can make the heads larger because, you know, you need that emotion to be expressed. Like if you look at Mr. Like if we're gonna, you can't really see him anymore. You know, that line kind of ruined his mouth. But this is a lot more of a subtle expression, you know, something like this or this versus something like this, which is really dramatic. You know, you got your larger lines to help define things better. You know, your eyes are a lot more contorted than what they would normally be in like real people. And so that's the whole thing of cartoons, is that you might want to make a bigger head to express more emotion more easily, because that's the whole point. And also because, let's say, I don't know, you're still a legend, okay? You're reading the newspaper, you're reading them colored in Sunday cartoons, you know, those are my favorite. And you see, and the cartoon's like really not that big. Like you might have like, I don't know, this part doesn't matter. You do not matter. Go away. No one loves you. But if we take, like, this could be a whole panel, right? And you have to cram a ton of information that displays something at once. So, like, we have, let's see. How about, he doesn't really have a name, does he? Jerry. That'll be his name. Jerry the farmer. He's got a cool haircut, okay? Right? Now, where's his fork? There's his fork, okay? Now, if you look at this, you know, this is super simplified. If you think of how complex human eyes are, right? You know, you got like if you think of Dr. Phil here, he's smiling, okay? But if we notice, he's got like his pupil, his iris, the whites of his eyes, the shadow under here, his eyebrow, his eyelash, everything. You know, his nose, his mouth, you can't really see it. It's been covered up. You know, his lips, all his face wrinkles and all this stuff here. This makes for a really, really detailed expression, right? This is very complex. But if you think about this is just like a V shape and 2 dots, right? And that represents happiness. It's super simple. And that's what you have to think. You have to think about simplification if you're going to do cartoons as well. Because like if let's see, let's try it over here again with another box of Jerry. Now, theoretically, I could make a cartoon, right? That is super realistic. Let's try Jerry again in the same proportions as last time. So we're just going to give him his triangle hair because it's unimportant. For this message, at least. We're going to give him his arm with his trident now. This is no longer a fork. It has ascended to the higher being. Okay. And if we try and draw everything here, it's going to take up a lot of space. Now, if you remember our proportion rules, you know, top and bottom, there's got to be somewhere in the middle here, okay, for his eyes. Now, so let's try this. Let's start with the pupil. You know, it's just going to be a dot because, you know, we're already going to run a room instantly. Then we have iris of the eye. And then we have, like, the whites of the eyes. And see, this is already starting to look horrifying. And if we get in that little bit of shadow in here, his eyebrows, you know, eyelashes, you know, this is already looking scary, right? And I haven't even done anything, really. So, it's not, I've lost my thought process. That's pretty cool. Anyways, you see, that's kind of scary, you know? Like, yeah, it conveys the meaning, but you know, add a little bit of color in there, you know, all of a sudden it's horrifying, right? And it doesn't even have the mouth. So that's something important, is that, you know, you can put all the detail in there, but people aren't going to be coming over here with, like, you know, this is their microscope, okay? Microscope, right? And they're not going to be trying to see, like, every little detail. And if you think about it, if you're mass printing cartoons, you have a printer. Printers, yeah, they can be detailed, but, like, it's a printer. It can't be, like, as ridiculously precise as original art, you know? Like, if you were to have, I don't know, if you were to fax scan machine thing the Mona Lisa, you know, you wouldn't be able to get nearly all the detail in there. Like, once you print it out, you're not going to get nearly as much detail as on the physical object. So that's really important, is that you got to make sure that, you know, you're not over-styling things, because then, you know, they look all, you know, scary. And yeah, maybe you want it to be scary, but there's much easier ways to express scariness, and it just looks a lot better that way as well. So yes, anyways, one last little note that's important about head proportions is, you know, chin, you know, how you draw a head. Well, you know, if you're making cartoons, you know, maybe a wedge, maybe they're like a circle. But if we look at an actual human, right, you kind of see, you know, there's men and women, they're different, but if we go up, we can see there's here, and there's the cheekbone, and then it goes in, and then it goes back out again, and then it goes around, and it does the same thing on that side. You just can't really see it. And then there's, like, the back part of this head here, right? That's your skull, and then you got your jawbone. So that's how everything forms in there, right? And so that's usually the shape you want to make, especially, you know, if you can see that angle like that. And so same thing with this. You can't really see the lines anymore, but yeah, you see the point. It's like if you've ever seen, like, an actual skull, you'll see how and if you look at it, it kind of curves in and then goes back out for the top. And for ears, you don't have to make them too fancy or large. You don't even have to make them exist if you don't want to. You know, you can just cover them up. But, you know, like in this one, you know, pretty simple. In relation, they're not too large in comparison to the eyes. You know, you don't really need them to be too large unless you're like an elf, and you're like, this is your elf man. So look at his hair. But and if you're drawing an elf, you know, you got to have like these kind of ears. You know, that's absolutely necessary. Or else, you know, it's not gonna really look like an elf that much. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, and the ears, of course, are just in the middle with the eyes. Pretty simple stuff. So I don't know if there's anything really else important, you know. They just, heads exist. Yeah, if you're drawing bald people, can't help you with that. Just put some hair over it until you want to draw bald people for whatever reason. So, yeah. Oh, you know what's important? Another note about things. If you're making cartoons, you can dramatize these face proportions here. Like, if you look at this, you know, JoJo, of course, and something that does this a lot. But if you look at this, this is a really wedge-like face. That's something you might want to try out. You know, same thing with this. You know, you got your, you know, this is smoother on this side, but very wedge-like. So it's just more angular, more simple, you know. Doesn't look as much like a real human. So that's pretty cool. Anyways, learning is fun. Yay.